The Last Starfighter promised a generation that a video game could change your life. But the game itself is a ghost. Did you know the arcade cabinet promised in the film's own credits was built, then buried? Or that the director was Michael Myers? 14 facts, starting with The Lost Game. 14. The Lost Game. Promised in the credits, 75% built, never released. Here's the film's great phantom. The Starfighter arcade game was supposed to be real. Atari planned a full tie-in cabinet. It's even mentioned in the movie's closing credits. And the fictional game Alex plays on screen was based on Atari's actual initial designs. The real machine reached roughly 75% completion. And then reality invaded. Development costs meant each cabinet would sell to arcade operators for around $10,000. Defensible only if the film became a Star Wars-sized smash. It didn't. The video game crash was strangling Atari, and the plug was pulled. The wreckage scattered everywhere. At least 4 attempts, arcade, Atari 2600, 5200, and a Japanese MSX deal, were canceled or rebranded. The 5200 home computer version was quietly retooled and released in 1986 as Star Raiders 2. Its Kodan fighters redressed as Xylons. Prototype ROMs circulate online, and fans finally built their own recreation 23 years later. The game that recruited Alex Rogan never existed, except almost. 13. The director was Michael Myers. The man who directed this wholesome space fable had previously terrorized America, literally. Nick Castle was the Shape in John Carpenter's original Halloween, the actual performer inside Michael Myers' mask, stalking Jamie Lee Curtis for his USC film school friend Carpenter, who paid him about $25 a day. 6 years later, the boogeyman of Haddonfield was directing Robert Preston in a family space opera, one of the strangest career pivots in Hollywood. Castle's craft fingerprints are worth knowing. On the archival commentary, he describes structuring The Last Starfighter as a musical without music. Story beats rising into set pieces the way numbers rise in a musical. Fitting for the son of a Hollywood choreographer. He admits he tried to avoid Spielberg and Lucas touches, but didn't always succeed, likens Lance Guest to a teenage Jimmy Stewart, and reveals the leads were originally named Skip and Penny. Halloween fans, look closely. The trailer park has never felt safer. 12. The CGI gamble, a supercomputer instead of models. The Last Starfighter did something genuinely historic. It threw away the model shop. Where every space film since Star Wars built miniatures, this production rendered its starships, environments, and battles digitally. One of the first films to use CGI for real-life objects, rather than a computer world like Tron's. The work fell to Digital Productions and their Cray XMP, a genuine supercomputer among the most powerful machines on Earth, which generated 27 minutes of effects across 300 scenes, each frame averaging 250,000 polygons at a resolution of 3,000 by 5,000 pixels. The pitch to the studio was economics as much as art. Digital Productions estimated computer animation took half the time and a third to half the cost of traditional effects. It was, as the filmmakers later admitted, a giant gamble. Every spaceship in the movie was betting on technology barely out of the lab. The gamble aged into prophecy. This is the ancestor of every effects blockbuster you've ever seen. 11. The Gunstar came from the man who designed Aliens World. The digital ships had an analog soul. Ron Cobb, one of cinema's legendary designers whose pen shaped Aliens Nostromo, Star Wars Cantina creatures, Conan the Barbarian, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Cobb served as this film's production designer, and director Nick Castle credits him bluntly. A lot of the design of the picture is from Ron Cobb. His Gunstar, muscular, asymmetric, believably engineered, gave the primitive polygons something priceless: industrial credibility. The computers were new, the design language was battle-tested. That's the film's secret formula, visible in retrospect. Revolutionary technology executing classical craftsmanship. Cobb designed as if the ships would be built as models, and the Cray simply built them out of math instead. On the commentary, Cobb himself discusses wrestling those primitive digital tools through procedures trivial today. When people say the film's CGI holds up surprisingly well, they're really complimenting a draftsman. The same hand that drew the most famous haunted spaceship in cinema. 10, Centauri was written for the Music Man casting Robert Preston, as Centauri wasn't casting. It was a homage in plain sight. The role of the interstellar recruiter was written specifically with Preston in mind, as a deliberate nod to his immortal turn as Professor Harold Hill in The Music Man. Once again, a silver-tongued con man breezes into a nowhere town selling dreams to restless kids. Except this time the con is real, and the band instruments are starfighters. Preston plays it with exactly that knowledge, giving the film its pulse of old Hollywood showmanship. It became his final theatrical film role before his death in 1987, a fact that reframes the performance as a farewell, one of the great fast-talking charmers of the American screen, exiting by literally driving a kid to the stars. The lovable con man, as the production described him, Hollywood gave Harold Hill one last territory and he closed the sale. 76 trombones, 1 star car, 9, shot in 38 nights, then thrown into the deadliest summer ever. The production was lean. 38 days of shooting, mostly night shoots out in Canyon Country, California, on a $15 million budget. Pocket change for a film attempting a digital revolution. Then Universal released it into the meat grinder, July 13th, 1984, one of the most murderous summers in box office history. Ghostbusters and Gremlins had landed 1 month earlier and were still devouring screens. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Star Trek III, and The Karate Kid crowded the same season. Against that lineup, The Last Starfighter's $28.7 million gross was respectable, nearly double its budget, but nowhere near the Lucas-level phenomenon its producers had banked on. And as we saw at number 14, that gap between modest success and blockbuster had a body count. It's precisely what killed the arcade game, the merchandising push, and the immediate sequel dreams. The film survived its summer. Its empire didn't. Quick pit stop at the Starlight Starbright. If this mission is earning it, hit like and subscribe, because we decode a cult classic every week. Now, back to the frontier, where this space opera literally became an opera. 8, it became a stage musical. And the novelization king wrote the book, Remember Nick Castle, calling his film a musical without music? In 2004, someone finished the thought, The Last Starfighter was adapted into an off-Broadway stage musical. Trailer Park, Gunstar, Death Blossom, and all, sung live. It joins our series' strangest club of afterlives, somewhere between Outland's unfinished Steranko comic and The Man from Earth's stage play, cult sci-fi refusing to stay in its original medium. And the print adaptation carries a familiar signature for viewers of this channel. The novelization was written by Alan Dean Foster, the same legend who novelized Alien, Ghost wrote the Star Wars novel, and, as our Outland episode revealed, quietly fixed that film's physics-breaking ending on the page. Foster's Starfighter expands Alex's world with the interior depth films can't pause for. Between the Broadway-style songbook and Foster's prose, the film's universe kept expanding everywhere, except the one place fans begged for: a movie screen. 7. The game curse never lifted. The arcade cancellation was only the first casualty in gaming's strangest curse. Count the bodies, the arcade cabinet, dead at 75%. A planned Atari 2600 version, actually the game universe, appropriated for the license, scrapped, later resurfacing as Solaris. The 5200 and 8-bit computer versions finished but shelved, reborn as Star Raiders 2. A licensed Japanese MSX deal with Pony Canyon that evaporated for reasons nobody has ever fully explained. 4 attempts, 4 failures, for a movie about a video game. The lone official release finally limped out years later on the Nintendo Entertainment System, a much-criticized cartridge bearing the film's name. The satisfying ending came from the fans. Decades on, enthusiasts built a free recreation of the movie's fictional cabinet. The trope namers call it defictionalization, finally letting players hear, "Greetings, Starfighter," from an actual machine. The Star League couldn't ship a product, the fan base could. 6. The sequel has been trapped in hyperspace for 40 years. The Last Starfighter's continuation is one of Hollywood's longest-running ghost stories. Talk began early, including a proposed TV spin-off, The Starfighter Chronicles, and has never stopped. In recent years, Rogue One writer Gary Whitta publicly teamed with original screenwriter Jonathan Betuel on a revival, even releasing striking concept art of a next-generation Gunstar. Fans dared to hope. Then, hyperspace silence. The obstacle is a rights labyrinth worthy of the Kodan. By multiple accounts, Universal holds theatrical and home video rights, while Warner Brothers, having absorbed Lorimar, controls international distribution. Other sources say Universal holds a remake option while Betuel personally retains sequel rights, and Betuel has allegedly resisted another film for years. The result? A property everyone wants and no one can launch. Somewhere in development purgatory sits the sequel to the movie about waiting in a trailer park for your big chance. The irony writes itself, slowly, for 4 decades. 5. The premise came true. And modern sci-fi admits it, the film's central fantasy of video games secretly scouting real-world talent stopped being fantasy. Militaries and organizations now openly use gaming as a recruitment and aptitude channel. The U.S. Army famously released its own video game as a recruiting tool and fields esports teams, while simulator skills genuinely feed into drone and pilot pipelines. The 1984 daydream that somebody important is watching your high score is now in modified form policy. Modern science fiction has paid the debt openly. Ernest Cline, the Ready Player, one author, built his novel Armada explicitly on the Starfighter premise with characters who name-check the film itself. Countless, the game was a test. Stories descend from Alex Rogan's trailer park. Even the film's opening, a camera pulling back from a starfield into an arcade screen, became a visual grammar for gaming cinema. The Star League's recruiting method turned out to be the most realistic thing in the movie. 4. The Star played 2 roles, and Grigg hid 2 more careers. Watch closely. Lance Guest is doing double duty. He plays both Alex Rogan and Beta, the android duplicate left behind in the trailer park to live Alex's life, meaning the film's most charming comedy is guest acting opposite his own deadpan copy. The Beta subplot with the android nobly buying time on Earth quietly gives the movie 2 heroes for the price of 1 performance. Meanwhile, under the reptilian makeup of Grigg, Alex's chuckling alien co-pilot, sits Dan O'Herlihy, an Oscar-nominated actor with a spectacular hidden resume. He was the sinister Connell Cochran in Halloween 3, a nice echo given his director was Michael Myers himself, and would soon become the Old Man, the corporate emperor of RoboCop. O'Herlihy performed Grigg's warmth through heavy prosthetics, the same trick Louis Gossett Jr. pulled in our Enemy Mine episode, a great actor smuggling a soul past the latex. 3. The company that made the revolution didn't survive it. Here's the melancholy footnote to the CG, I break through, digital productions, the pioneers with the Cray, collapsed before the future they invented arrived. Founded by computer graphics visionaries John Whitney Jr. and Gary Demos, the company proved on this film that digital effects could replace models at scale. But supercomputer time was ruinously expensive. Hollywood wasn't ready to commit. And in the mid-1980s, the company was absorbed in a hostile takeover by Omnibus, a conglomerate that itself imploded soon after, taking the era's leading CGI houses down with it in a collapse industry veterans grimly nicknamed for its initials DOA. The revolution paused, waiting for cheaper machines, then detonated a few years later with The Abyss, Terminator 2, and Jurassic Park, built by others on ground Digital Productions had surveyed. The Last Starfighter stands as their monument, the rare film whose effects house was, like its hero, recruited too early for a war that hadn't started yet. 2. The cult grew until the film got the star treatment time has been kinder than the summer of '84. The Last Starfighter's audience compounded across decades of cable, VHS, and word of mouth. Kids who saw it at 10 showed it to their own kids, until the film graduated to full prestige restoration status. A 4K scan from the original camera negative, released by Arrow Video, complete with the 4.1 audio mix created for the original 70mm engagements and never before included on home formats. The special edition even resurrects sci-fi author Greg Bear's never-published Omni magazine article about digital productions. Archaeology for the digital age. Anniversary retrospectives now treat it as a milestone. The surviving Gunstar artifacts are photographed like relics, and the film sits securely in the cult canon beside the decade's beloved also-rans. The pattern should be familiar by now to viewers of this series. The box office measures one summer. The trailer parks of the world get the final vote. 1. The film that predicted both halves of the future. Step Back and The Last Starfighter's legacy splits into two prophecies, both fulfilled. Technologically, it's a founding document of modern cinema. The film that bet a supercomputer could replace the model shop, the direct ancestor of every digital blockbuster, made when 27 minutes of CGI was a moonshot. Culturally, it's the founding myth of gamer self-worth. The first major film to tell arcade kids their wasted hours were training, a premise that echoed through Ready Player One, Armada, esports, and every real recruiter who ever watched a leaderboard. And it wrapped both prophecies in something timeless, a small-town fable about a kid who thinks his life is too ordinary to matter. That's why it endures where flashier films faded. Underneath the polygons, it's Frank Capra with a Death Blossom. The game was fake. The graphics were primitive. The summer was brutal. The promise, someone sees you, was real. It still is. Those were 14 facts most fans have never heard about The Last Starfighter. Which one got you? The game that never shipped, or Michael Myers directing? Post your high score in the comments. If this earned it, hit like, subscribe, and send it to the friend who still checks arcade cabinets for recruitment messages. Until next time, Death Blossom on 3.